Every single one of the story's protagonists is at least 18 years old. My last visit to my hometown was about 25 years ago. To the exact minute minus 25 years, 5 months, and 12 days. I departed at the age of 26, a man in shambles. It happened the day after I received the news that my wife, with whom I had shared a home for 3 years, was expecting our first child. In fact, it is hers and her boss's, not mine. Even though she made no effort to conceal the fact that she was pregnant, I knew the moment she told me the news that the baby wasn't mine. We were young and without money. I secured a temporary position on a river barge that traversed the Mississippi River due to the challenging economic climate. It was a substantial sum for a young man, but I had to go for 6 or 8 weeks. It was 9, as it turned out. The breakup was worthwhile, in our own opinions, for the simple reason that I could have made 4 times as much in only 2 months in my prior employment. The two of us were young and head over heels for each other. No problem for us. It took my wife almost 2 weeks of self-control before she gave in and started making out with David Hollister, our supervisor. Along with 2 other administrative assistants, she worked for his insurance company. She ended up being the 3rd one he utilized. Even though our town was quite small, he had excellent contacts. So, he simply grinned even when they were face to face. "So, Debbie, what are you planning to do? Will you attempt to destroy me? Do you intend to file a lawsuit against me?" "No, I am not wed. You don't have a dime to retain legal representation, and the local judge happens to be my brother-in-law." The following day, he fired her and paid her $1,000 in severance. She had already landed a morning shift job at a nearby diner when I got back to town 2 weeks later. It was moving to hear the sorrow in her voice as she recounted this story to me. For 15 minutes, she apologized to herself. I then insisted on suing the dweeb with the $12,500 I had just gotten. "Tom, we can resolve this, it was meaningless." Simply put, I was lonely. I stood rigidly silent as she went on incoherently. She may have made out with him 20 or more times while I was away, since she admitted it didn't signify anything. I smirked sarcastically at her expense, and I believe her hesitation was an expression of real surprise. After quietly doing 2 loads of laundry for the following hour, I packed up my belongings and departed for good. In the late 1990s, when cell phones were still a novelty, she had no practical means of contacting me. After that, I lost all contact with her. Yes, I was hurt, humiliated, furious, and hurt beyond words. As a naive young guy, I didn't know how or where to begin in my quest to devise a means of slaying the dunce and the bastard, no matter how much I wanted to. I am left without parents. I stayed in picturesque Hannibal, Missouri, because I had a sister in Chicago and no other ties kept me there. I rode the barge one more, then proceeded west in a used Ford F-150 pickup. It took me 20 years, but I finally made it to the top. This led me to get a degree in finance while I was an accountant for a small Denver firm for 3 years. With no one else to distract me while I went to school, I was able to finish my degree in little over 2 years. Even if Debbie wanted a divorce, I had no clue. I have no idea for sure, but I believe she got a divorce. I continued my westward journey with a few letters after my name and a few money in my pocket, eventually settling in Bend, Oregon. After doing some research, I decided it would be a good area to reset, even if I didn't know anyone there. For summers, I loved golfing and mountain biking, and winters, I loved skiing. Additionally, I firmly believed that Hannibal to Bend was not a major migrant route, and in order for me to purge my past and begin anew. I started out as a one-man investment brokerage, but by the time I was 10 years old, I had 3 associates and a couple of secretaries. With about $200,000 per annum, my world was flourishing. My social life flourished, and I was free to go on dates whenever I pleased. I never considered getting married since the memory of Debbie's treachery lingered in the recesses of my mind. Coworkers once asked me why I wasn't more involved with my family, but I never gave them the whole story. My response was a simple not for me followed by a shrug of the shoulders. There have been moments over the years when Deb has been on my mind. Thoughts kept popping into my head. We were married for 3 years after dating for 2. I spent the majority of those 5 years under the false impression that I was engaged to my soulmate. The news that she had an affair with her boss and was carrying his child outside of wedlock came as a huge shock to me. I hoped these traumatic experiences would not make me inflexible. I try my best to see the positive side of life and be a generous and kind person to everyone I meet. So here I am, hopping on a Delta aircraft from Portland to St. Louis, and then jumping to Hannibal, even though I'm doing great and letting go of the past. Why? It just so happens that my mom's side of the family has an uncle who passed away and left me a little bequest. I managed to be located and contacted by his lawyer. While on the phone, we talked about this. I could have let him handle everything remotely, but I figured I may as well make one last trip to the old manor. So I embarked on a journey along the route of memories at the age of 51, a transformed person. Even though I like to be frugal, I opted to fly first class since I was expecting an inheritance of about $40,000. As I settled into my seat, I noticed a lovely young woman, maybe in her mid-20s, seated next to me. She went by the name Tabitha. And she had gone to Bend to see some pals. On her 25th birthday, her mom gave her the trip. Through Nebraska, we had become fast friends and were chatting along like old times. A high school teacher in the area wed Tabitha's mother when she was about 2 years old. The mother was unmarried at the time of her daughter's birth. He was sacked and sent to jail for the unfortunate act of molestation he committed on 2 girl students. Her mother remarried a local businessman when Tabitha was 12 years old. While she was a high school student, her family resided in a lovely house. After graduating, she attended college in Missouri. Her parents' discovery of her husband's affair with his secretary terminated their second marriage 6 years ago. Her mother made the decision to remain alone at that very time. She continued by saying that she had worked in St. Louis after earning her degree in accounting as we sipped wine and talked. She spent the weekend with her parents at least once per month. She obviously cared for her mom, but she also believed her mom was slightly insane. Tabitha didn't learn how to be in a stable, loving relationship from her mother, who obviously didn't know much about men. Something in her eyes piqued my interest as we spoke. But I couldn't put my finger on it, so I continued to ignore it. With the exception of my brief marriage and subsequent split, I gave her the whole rundown of my life when she inquired about my background. Even more so with a young woman I met on the plane, a woman around half my age. I simply did not want to discuss it with anyone. It appeared like she was satisfied with what I had to say and wasn't very interested. I also learned that little Tabitha and her father were having issues as we were in our final hour of flying as we were getting close to Kansas City. Despite the small amount of alcohol we consumed, she embraced me tightly as we conversed. Too much, and she was obviously trying to flirt. It seemed like she was trying to gauge my interest in her by inquiring about the lack of an engagement ring. The young woman who was trying to seduce me was attractive, to be honest. Even though I'm in decent shape and have a decent social life, what sort of 25-year-old would be interested in a man who could pass for her father? Tabitha was now reaching out to hold my hand and said that she had a few more days off before going back to work. She invited me to go to Hannibal with her. Maybe she'll surprise her mom by paying her a surprise visit, and she'll even take the time to show me around her transformed hometown. I might be an outcast, but I certainly am not naive, is a quote that has always stuck with me. I treated Tabitha to a plane ticket from St. Louis to Hannibal the moment we touched down. On the plane, I made sure she was seated close to me. The flight was brief, only 40 minutes, and there weren't any first-class seats on this tiny plane. The cabin lights were turned down as soon as takeoff. It was already dark and late in the evening when we took to the skies. Tabitha extended her arm and kissed me right then. Even though it didn't crackle, the kiss was scorching. In my ear, Tabitha purred gently while smiling. My goodness. There is a major issue with Dad. An assist would be greatly appreciated. I held her hand and whispered, "If you continue to behave badly, I will have to punish you when we arrive, young lady." I could feel the heat radiating from her as she whispered back, "Of course, I hope so." We landed in 20 minutes. I had rented a nice VRBO near the city, overlooking the Mississippi River. It was too late to call her mom, and neither of us was in the mood to leave. Tabitha stayed the night at my place, and we agreed that she would speak to her mom tomorrow while I was with the lawyer. There was no intention for me to meet with her parents, and we both understood that. Although Tabitha understood it would be wise to exercise restraint, she was unprepared for her mother's wrath at her daughter's hasty decision to have an affair with a guy somewhat older than herself. After we entered, I pushed Tabitha against the wall with one hand firmly holding her wrists above her head, and it just took a minute. I thought she had the perfect pair of 34s, and I was right. She pulled away from the kiss and insisted I let her shower first. I figured it was a smart move because we drove for over 7 hours. I offered to give her a back rub, but she grinned wickedly and told me to wait while she got ready to make her dad pleased. Could I survive the night with this young vixen? Who the fuck was she? Because of the deep tub, I gave her permission to use the master bedroom's bathroom. In the guest room, I showered. It was as expected from Tabitha. Leaning against the doorframe, she spoke with the most endearing tone of a small kid. "My son, I have been extremely misbehaved." "What were you up to, darling?" My mind felt like it was about to explode. "That is quite mischievous, Tabitha. So what's Dad's plan for you?" She approached me, her voice dripping with allure, as she swayed, sliding into my lap. "Daddy, bad girls should be spanked. By use of my left hand." I seized her by the shoulders and held her close, my forearm encircling her short, blonde hair. "Slap." "Oh. Give it a good slap." The subsequent 3 trailed closely behind one another. "Oh, Dad, I'm sorry I was a cheater and a teaser. I owe you a lot. Permit me to make amends to you, Daddy, by being a nice girl. Give it a good slap." several forceful blows. "My darling, how are you going to get back on my good side? It is necessary to discipline dishonest cheaters." A low snarl escaped my lips. I'm on the verge of letting myself use her right this second by dragging myself away from the edge of the bed. "Daddy, I beg you," she said. My hold on her became less firm. We grabbed a break and drank some water. We got naked in the shower after waking up, then got dressed and headed to breakfast. She decided to call her mom after breakfast on Saturday since she knew she wouldn't be at work. Considering our case will only take about an hour and he will be paid $5,000 for closing the inheritance, Eric Hodges, the lawyer representing my uncle's estate, agreed to meet with me on Saturday at 10 a.m. After work, Tabitha and I are going to grab dinner and beverages. Without disclosing our position, she told her parents that she was meeting a guy. We might meet at this restaurant she suggested, and she warned me that it would be busy, so I should probably make a reservation. Next, we'll head back to our house for the night. Also, I'll be returning to the airport first thing in the morning, while she keeps visiting her mom. I offered to get her a plane ticket to St. Louis, but she was under the impression that her mom would prefer to take Monday off and bring her home. We were prepared. Tabitha stretched out and planted a delicate kiss on my lips as we departed. Whispering to her father, she expressed her excitement about their upcoming meeting. I thought to myself, it's fortunate it was just a weekend. I may never have turned around if it had happened. Using the app, I was able to locate Hodges' office. Its prime location in the heart of the city made it ideal for a shopping and dining district. At precisely 10 minutes before the top of the hour, I parked just around the corner and made my way into his office. His face lit up with joy as he greeted me with a handshake and a smile. For only a few minutes we spoke about everything and nothing. During his inquiry about my family tree, I mentioned that I had resided in this very spot many years ago, beyond what was absolutely required. I withheld all information on my background. Everything was actually pretty straightforward once we came down to brass tacks. Many formalities might be sidestepped thanks to my uncle's will. My driver's license was copied multiple times by Hodges for his file cabinet. He proceeded to read aloud the will. Following our parting ways, he presented me with a check for $47,000 and a few last words of pleasantry. Returning to my car, I strode out the door. As I rounded the bend, I beheld Tabitha a block distant, accompanied by an old lady who appeared to be her mother, because they were too busy chatting and laughing to pay attention to anyone else. I went unnoticed. I went completely still. My ex-wife Debbie was staring at me. I would have recognized her anywhere, even though it had been 25 years since I last saw her and she appeared older. The reason Tabitha's eyes had piqued my interest finally clicked. Those eyes resembled those of her mother. Ignoring my presence, they proceeded to enter a clothing boutique, crossing the street approximately half a block away. Holy cow. She was my ex-wife's kid, and I used her. Many years ago, a whirlwind of emotions swept over me. My hands were trembling and I was drenched in cold sweat. Crossed the street in the fucking clothing store, oblivious to my presence, was the dweeb who betrayed my profoundest love and deprived me of the happiness that comes from living with a genuine companion. Out of nowhere, I began to laugh quietly, despite the fact that the pain was excruciating. All those times I was trying to figure out how to get the best of this moron came flooding back to me. I choose to disregard my experience in Bend a full year after my arrival. I was well aware that there was no way I could ever even the odds. The cheating fool will face whatever fate befalls him, and I will not be involved. Despite her treachery, I refuse to let myself be utterly destroyed. Even if it means giving up on all hope of retribution, I will be okay, no matter how much I am hurt. My amusement level skyrocketed as I pondered the matter further. Onlookers on the street may have pondered what the fuck was so hilarious. I laughed as I rested my head against my car to collect my breath. My laughter, I now understood, was foreboding rather than relieved. My lack of chivalry and Debbie-ness finally hit me. I wasn't planning on rousing dozing dogs earlier, but I'm going to make the most of this circumstance now. Maybe a different response would have come from a man who was more experienced. After a certain point, a good guy would likely conclude that enough was enough and move on from the past. Not I. At that moment, my need for vengeance became clear. Unfortunately. None. I fear harming Tabitha in the process, which is something I would like not to do. My goal is to treat her with kindness. She is not to blame. But hurting my ex was something I planned to relish. In order to avoid the clothing store, I waited around 4 homes away after crossing the street. I went over to meet them as they emerged. The following 5 minutes were really entertaining, but they definitely wouldn't have been suitable for a Hallmark movie. Salutations, Tabitha. Oh, Tabitha, my hand was waved as I yelled. She glanced up, slightly mortified, as far as I could tell. We reached a consensus that meeting her mom wasn't necessary. Her expression encompassed both astonishment and a hint of unease. I got the look from Debbie, the kind of expression anyone would give to a total stranger, who was obviously a friend of her daughter at first. Quickly, Debbie's interest shifted from curiosity to bewilderment, recognition, and astonishment as I smiled and drew forward. As she yelled out, her index finger sped up to her mouth. Now Tabitha was the one who was mortified. "Is he someone you know, Mom?" I spoke up before she could step in. "Hello, Debbie. Long time no see." "Oh, so delightful. I don't understand why you're here, Tom. I don't understand your connection to my kid, and why you're even here. Tom, are you aware, Mom? You must be familiar with my mom, right? Somehow, this is achievable. Please tell me what is happening." Their confusion was palpable. "Ladies, I'll do my best to explain. The name is Tabitha. You'll be the first. Just 5 minutes ago, I had no clue that your mom was my cheating, lying ex-wife. Even though we didn't bring it up on the flight last night, I got married here a long time ago. If Debbie wants to contribute anything, she should interrupt me. No? All right, I will proceed. My one and only true love was your mother, Tabitha. Our love knew no bounds as we were young and impoverished, making do with what I have. I was away for approximately 9 weeks after landing a job on a river barge. We both knew it would be tough before I left, but our love was strong, and we knew we could overcome any obstacle. For 2 months while I was aboard that boat, my thoughts were consumed with Debbie and the means by which I could return to her. Getting my money and heading home made me so happy. We could truly begin our lives as a couple. I was shocked beyond belief when my devoted wife, who had vowed to be true to me, told me she was carrying an illegitimate kid. During our conversation, it came to my attention that she waited barely 2 weeks before having sexual relations with her supervisor, your daddy David Hollister. Both ladies screamed in shock at these words. My bad, I went on. Have you ever revealed your daughter's biological father to her, Debbie? Oh. What a shame. She has issues with her dad, and they manifest themselves when she makes love, so maybe that's the reason. I was afraid Debbie would pass out. In any case, my mother's indiscretion with her boss damaged our future together and me in just a few weeks. She plainly didn't follow his instructions after he offered her $1,000 to leave and be silent. After leaving the city, I was emotionally and mentally impoverished. It took me nearly 5 years to recover and begin putting my life back together. Your question should be thusly addressed. I will now respond to you, Debbie. My uncle lived in the city, so I went back there. After his passing, he bequeathed me a modest sum. In order to finish up my inheritance, I chose to go back and see my hometown one last time. I had no intention of attempting to locate you because I had no knowledge that you were still residing here. Why should I long to be reunited with an egotistical moron who completely disregarded my feelings and our relationship? Regardless, a stunning young woman named Tabitha introduced herself to me on the plane. Over a few glasses of wine, we had a pleasant conversation and got to know each other better. Not only did she not identify her mother to me, but she also refused to tell me your name. Nonetheless, I already mentioned that we enjoyed ourselves and had a fantastic time. I can't help but wonder whether this is related to her ongoing search for a caring father figure. It was in the evening that we took out for Hannibal, where she stayed the night with me. It was just remarkable, you know. You made love with such zeal and brilliance that I don't remember ever seeing you do it. I count at least 8 times that we have made love, but I can't be positive. Do you have any idea how much your daughter enjoys being a tool? Red in color and visibly enraged, Tabitha was now. Debbie was feeling down and out, and she had tears in her eyes. I am nearly finished. I turned my gaze back to Tabitha. Please know that I empathize with your grief and anger right now. Nevertheless, you have no concept of the depth of suffering that exists in this world, Tabitha. It appears that I slightly betrayed you. Unfortunately, I'm not a very good guy, and I could see your mom turn around and go. That dweeb you call mom is mostly to blame. I promise we will never bring it up again, and please know that I harbor no ill will against you. I wish you the best in life, and I promise to be your buddy in Ben if you ever need one. Feel free to do as you like. I apologize for getting you, a lovely young woman, embroiled in this. But nevertheless, I'd be thrilled to have supper with you this evening, no pressure or anything. Somewhat, Tabitha's expression softened. Debbie, your anguish and tears help me heal. I thought there would never be an opportunity to express the depth of the anguish you inflicted on me. Never in a million years would I have thought of such a strategy. Now that I'm here, though, I hope you know that your terror is palpable. You have a little idea of what you've done to me now. I can see the pain radiating off of your face. It must be excruciating. In addition to being an amazing young woman, your daughter is also quite competent in the bedroom. For the rest of your life, I wish the memory of how I used it last night will stick with you. So long. Hearing Debbie sob, I turned and went away, the burden of the world lifted off my shoulders. Afterwards, I received a call on my cell. In any case, are you still planning to have dinner with me, Dad? I was being somewhat mischievous by yelling at my mom,